Su-30 coming to Iran? Elite Russian fighters in Iranian hands set to be a game changer for the Middle East. The Iranian Air Force's inventory today is far from remarkable. The service fields 10 squadrons of Vietnam War-era US-made F-40 and F-5E fighters, between them comprised of around 130 fighters, and 2 squadrons of the more formidable American F-14 Tomcat heavyweight air superiority fighters, between them boasting approximately 45 combat-capable jets. These fighters were relied on heavily to wage an 8-year war with Iraq from 1980 to 1988, after which Iran was able to acquire a sizable contingent of early variants of the Soviet MiG-29A medium fighters and 24 Chinese J-7M light fighters. The country also received a number of older Soviet aircraft from Iraq in 1991 during the Gulf War, with pilots fleeing to the safety of Iranian airfields to escape Western bombardment of their own. These included some additional MiG-29 fighters, French-built Mirage F-1 jets, and dozens of swept-wing Su-22 and Su-24M strike platforms. Iran has since inducted some indigenous light platforms such as the CK-Nkausa twin-engine light fighter, a platform analogous to the US F-20 Tajar Shark and similarly based on the same original F-5 design. As a result of the sourcing of its fighters, the Air Force today fields a somewhat ragtag force of over 10 different combat aircraft types. Of these, only the Su-24M, MiG-29A and F-14 are considered 4th-generation aircraft, and the F-14 is the only Iranian fighter equipped with active radar-guided long-range air-to-air missiles. With the partial exceptions of the F-14 and Su-24M, Iran's fleet is poorly suited to carrying out operations beyond its borders, which has relegated the Air Force to an almost purely defensive role for decades. Although Iran has vastly expanded its influence across the Middle East, most recently sending military advisors to Syria to oversee the ever-expanding deployments of a number of militias aligned with Tehran, the country lacks power projection assets from which to project force directly from Iranian territory itself. By contrast, the country's regional rivals Israel and Saudi Arabia, the Western Bloc's primary defense partners in the region, both field sizable fleets of F-15 and F-15SA strike fighters ideal for projecting power, and Israel in particular has used these to undermine Iranian interests in the past by conducting airstrikes far from their own borders. In regards to the extremely limited capabilities of Iran's Air Force today, Israeli Air Force Brigadier General Israel Baharev stated, "The Iranian Air Force is basically comprised of old US planes and aircraft that the Iranians managed to obtain later. I believe that the Iranian Air Force could be taken into account only if it has to operate in Iranian airspace, that is, the Iranian Air Force is incapable of effective power projection." The general further stated regarding the underwhelming expeditionary capabilities of the Iranian Air Force and their inability to conduct operation near or into Israeli territory, great distance and other factors play a role. They of course could try, but the capabilities of their aircraft are extremely limited in case of accomplishing such a task. Their missiles pose a greater threat to us than their aviation. Given the current capabilities of the Iranian Air Force, this remains a highly realistic assessment.